The table was set. Sparkling crystal glasses, gleaming silver cutlery, and a centerpiece of impossibly white lilies. It was a picture-perfect scene, straight out of a magazine. The air hummed with a quiet, joyful energy. But for Rachel, it wasn't a picture of family. It was a frame of betrayal. They were all there. Her parents, her younger brother, and his new radiant fiancée, Sarah. They were laughing, clinking glasses, and talking about the future. Their future. A future that, just a few weeks ago, was supposed to be hers. Her heart felt like a block of ice, cold and heavy in her chest. For years, Rachel had been the pillar of her family. She'd put her own dreams on hold, working 2 jobs to put her brother Mark through engineering school. She'd helped her parents pay off their mortgage. She was the dependable one, the strong one, the one who sacrificed everything. And for what? For a table where she was barely a guest. For a family dinner where the conversation revolved around Mark and Sarah's engagement party, a party Rachel wasn't even invited to. The betrayal was a dull ache that had become a sharp, constant pain. She watched as her mother adjusted Sarah's necklace, a family heirloom that was meant for her. Her father, usually so stoic, was beaming at Mark with an admiration he had never shown Rachel. The table, they'd always told her, was for family. But tonight it was painfully clear that she was no longer a part of the circle. She was an outsider looking in, watching the very people she'd given everything for celebrate her replacement. And then the waiter approached the table, a crisp, leather-bound bill in his hand. The number on it wasn't just a cost. It was the final, devastating punchline to her life's cruelest joke. It was a bill for $2,200, and she knew, with chilling certainty, exactly what was about to happen. For as long as she could remember, Rachel had been the responsible one. The family relied on her. Her parents, bless their hearts, were simple, hard-working people. They always wanted the best for their children. The problem was, the best was always reserved for Mark. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. From a young age, it was clear that his education was the family's top priority. Rachel, being the older sister, was implicitly tasked with making sure that dream became a reality. She started working right out of high school. While her friends were going to college parties and living the carefree life, Rachel was pulling double shifts at a diner. The money she earned wasn't for her, it was for Mark's tuition, his books, his rent. He was brilliant, no doubt. He got into a top-tier engineering program, and her parents were so proud. "This is for our family," her mother would say, squeezing her hand. "You are doing this for all of us." And Rachel believed her. She truly did. She believed that one day when Mark was successful, he would help her and they would all be happy together. But the years went by, and things changed. Mark's graduation day was a blur of joy and relief for her parents. For Rachel, it was a moment of quiet, unspoken hope. Now that he was a professional, would he finally help her pursue her own dreams? Maybe she could go to night school, get a degree, and finally stop working herself to the bone. That hope, however, quickly faded. Mark got a high-paying job, a beautiful apartment, and a life she could only dream of. He was living the life she had bought for him, but he never once offered to help her. Not a single cent. He would show up for family dinners with expensive gifts for their parents, but would barely acknowledge Rachel's presence. He acted as if her contributions were just part of the natural order of things, a duty she was expected to fulfill. Then came Sarah. She was perfect in every way. Beautiful, intelligent, and from a wealthy family. Her parents were enchanted. Her father would tell Rachel, "You have to meet Sarah. She's the daughter we always wanted." The words were a knife to her heart. All the sacrifices, all the late nights, all the missed opportunities. And for what? To be told she wasn't enough? To be replaced by a woman who had done nothing for them but had everything? The final blow came last week. Mark and Sarah announced their engagement. A lavish fairy tale engagement party was planned. When Rachel asked if she could help, her mother just looked at her with pity. "Don't be silly, dear. This is for Mark and his new family. You don't need to worry about the details." The conversation around the table tonight was a symphony of her deepest fears. They talked about Mark and Sarah's future home, a place Sarah's parents were helping them buy. They talked about the wedding venue, a place her parents had said was too expensive for any family event. And then her mother announced, "Oh, and we've decided to give the family heirloom to Sarah. It's a tradition, you know, for the eldest daughter-in-law." Rachel's blood ran cold. That necklace had been promised to her since she was a little girl. It was a symbol of her place in the family. A symbol that was now being passed on to someone who had been in their lives for less than a year. As she sat there listening to them talk and laugh, a cold clarity washed over her. She was not part of the family they were talking about. She was an ATM, a free labor source, a forgotten footnote. She was a ghost at her own family's feast. And as the waiter approached the table, she knew the final act of their betrayal was about to be revealed. She watched him place the bill down, and her heart pounded a frantic rhythm. This was it, the final test. And she knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that she was about to fail. 3. Turning point, confrontation. The waiter, a young man with a kind, unassuming face, placed the leather-bound bill on the table. He didn't put it in the center, as one might expect. He slid it directly in front of Mark. A small gesture, but a symbolic one. The golden boy, the one with the high-paying job, the one who was the future of the family, was the one responsible for the cost. Mark, however, didn't even glance at it. He was too busy laughing at a joke Sarah had just made about their honeymoon destination. Rachel watched, her heart thumping. This was it. The moment she knew was coming. Her father, catching her eye, gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent command, an expectation. He expected her to take care of it, as she always did. He expected her to pay. For all the years she had worked, for all the money she had given them, this was the final insult. They had brought her to this expensive dinner, not as a cherished family member, but as a silent, invisible wallet. She took a deep breath, the lily's sweet scent now feeling cloying and suffocating. Her hands trembled under the table. The conversation continued around her, a bubble of oblivious bliss. "Oh, the engagement party will be so grand," her mother cooed. "Sarah's parents are covering the band, of course, but the venue is ours. It's a huge expense, but worth every penny for our Mark." They talked about the family's finances as if Rachel wasn't even there. Finally, Mark noticed the bill. He picked it up and his face paled slightly. He fumbled with it, the paper crackling in his hands. "Wow, this is a lot," he muttered, his voice losing its confident edge. Sarah looked at him with a puzzled expression. "What is it, honey?" she asked. Mark showed her the bill. She gasped, a delicate hand flying to her mouth. $2,200? For dinner? She whispered. "That's insane. I thought your parents were paying." All eyes turned to Rachel. Her father cleared his throat. "Well, Rachel has always handled things like this," he said, his tone a mixture of expectation and dismissal. "She's very good with money." Her mother chimed in, "Yes, dear. It's just a little gesture, a way of you celebrating your brother's success." The words were like acid. A little gesture was what they called years of her life, and thousands of her hard-earned dollars. A little gesture was a debt she was expected to pay without question. A quiet fury began to build inside her. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the blatant, unapologetic entitlement. They had taken her sacrifices for granted for so long that they had forgotten she was a person. She was a resource, a tool to be used and discarded. Sarah, sensing the sudden shift in the mood, looked at Rachel with a mix of pity and confusion. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. I didn't realize." But her apology was a whisper in a storm. Rachel's voice was low, but it cut through the room like a razor. "This table," she said, her eyes fixed on her mother, "is for family, right?" Her mother nodded, a nervous smile on her face. "But not for me." The smile vanished. "I've been paying for this family for years. I paid for Mark's education. I helped you with the mortgage. I put my life on hold for a future that was never mine." Mark's face flushed a deep red. "Rachel, what are you talking about? Mom and Dad helped me with everything. The truth, raw and brutal, hung in the air. They didn't, Rachel said, her voice shaking with controlled rage. I did. Every late night, every penny, every sacrifice, it all came from me. And now, you're giving away the last thing that was promised to me. She pointed a trembling finger at Sarah's necklace. The necklace. It was mine. It was always supposed to be mine. Sarah's hand flew to her neck, her eyes wide with shock. The table had gone completely silent. The picture-perfect family dinner was shattered. The ugly truth was finally out. 3. Turning point. Confrontation. The silence that followed Rachel's words was heavier than any conversation. Mark's face, once a picture of golden boy confidence, was a mask of disbelief and shame. He looked at their parents, then at Rachel, his eyes wide. "Is this true?" he stammered. "You paid for my school? Why would you do that?" Rachel let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Because that's what a family does, right? Or so I was told." She stood up, her voice rising with every word. "I sacrificed my life for your future, and you didn't even notice. You let me work 2 jobs, miss out on my own dreams, all so you could live this perfect life you never earned. And you," she turned to her parents, a new wave of anger washing over her, "you let it happen. You stood by and watched me give everything while you celebrated him." Her mother's eyes filled with tears, not of regret, but of embarrassment. "Rachel, please, not in front of Sarah," she begged. "This is not the time or place." "Oh, it's the perfect time and place," Rachel said, a cold, hard resolve settling over her. "Because Sarah needs to know the truth about the family she's marrying into. You're not just getting a son, Sarah. You're getting a whole lifetime of debt paid by the person who is now considered disposable." She pointed to the bill lying on the table. "This dinner? The $2,200 bill? I'm not paying it." Mark's jaw dropped. "What? Rachel, you can't be serious. This is a family emergency." "No," she said, shaking her head. "This is your emergency. Your turn to be the dependable one. Your turn to take care of the family. The waiter is waiting, and I'm not paying." Her parents started to panic, whispering frantically to Mark. They pleaded with him, telling him to just put it on his credit card. Mark, in a fit of rage, pulled out his wallet. Fine, I'll pay," he yelled, his face red. He fumbled for his credit card, but his hand froze as Rachel continued. "And that's not all," she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "There's something else you should know. The money I've given you all these years, it's not a gift." She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of neatly folded papers. She slid them onto the table. "It's a loan, a legally binding loan." Her parents gasped. They picked up the papers, their hands trembling. They were promissory notes, signed by them over the years, detailing every major financial contribution Rachel had made, from Mark's tuition to the mortgage payments. They had signed them without a second thought, assuming they were just formalities. But Rachel had gone to a lawyer and had them notarized. The total amount, in bold letters, was over $150,000, and there was an interest rate, a very high one. Mark read the papers, his face turning ashen. "You did this? To your own family?" he whispered, horrified. "No," Rachel replied, her voice steady. "You did this to me. I simply decided to get back what was mine, every penny, every hour, every sacrifice." Her father looked at her with a mix of fury and disbelief. He grabbed the bill for the dinner and the promissory notes, his hand shaking. The perfect family dinner was a disaster. The laughter had been replaced by tears, shame, and a cold, brutal silence. Rachel simply stood there, watching the scene unfold, a deep, satisfying calm washing over her. She had been invisible for so long, and now finally they were seeing her. Not as a ghost or a wallet, but as the powerful, resilient woman she had become. Rachel stood there, a quiet, powerful figure in the wreckage of what was once her family dinner. The silence was deafening. Her parents were a study in shock, their faces a mix of disbelief and dawning realization. Mark was staring at the legal papers as if they were a foreign language. Sarah, the innocent bystander, looked from one face to another, finally understanding the depth of the betrayal she had stumbled into. The manager, alerted by the commotion, approached the table. He took one look at the scene and then at Rachel. She simply nodded toward the bill. "They'll be taking care of it," she said, her voice calm and steady. "And any future debts." With that, she turned to leave. Mark finally found his voice. "Rachel, where are you going? You can't just leave." "I'm going to start my life," she said, not looking back. "The one I was always meant to have." She walked out of the restaurant and into the night, the cool air feeling like a cleansing breath. The city lights seemed to sparkle brighter than ever before. She wasn't just walking away from a dinner bill, she was walking away from years of emotional and financial burden. She was walking away from a family that had taken her for granted for far too long. The revenge wasn't about the money, it was about reclaiming her own worth. In the weeks that followed, Rachel started a new chapter. She used the money she had saved to enroll in night classes, pursuing the degree she had always dreamed of. She blocked her family's calls and messages. It was difficult at first, and the guilt tried to creep in, but she reminded herself of the empty table, the unpaid bill, and the necklace promised to someone else. It was her choice, and it was the right one. The truth of her story spread through their small community like wildfire. Friends and distant relatives who had always seen her as the quiet, reliable one were now seeing her as a hero. They saw a woman who stood up for herself and refused to be a doormat. Her actions, though painful, served as a powerful lesson. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from those who take you for granted. Years later, Rachel was a successful professional with a beautiful home and a life she had built on her own terms. She never saw her family again. The last she heard, Mark and Sarah's marriage was strained, burdened by the financial realities of their expensive lifestyle. Her parents were now looking to Mark to help them, and the cycle of expectation continued. But Rachel was no longer a part of it. The table was for family, as they had said, but she had found her true family in the person she had become. The moral of this story is simple. Your kindness is not a weakness, but if you give and give without receiving any respect, in return, you're not building a family, you're building a debt. And sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is collect. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And for more tales of justice and revenge, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell.